Good morning, everyone,
Good morning.
Good morning.
and welcome. Welcome to the Toronto Spirit Society. Today is June 15th, 2025. Man, the time flies. Today is Father Day in Canada and many other countries. So, for all the fathers, grandfathers, great grandfathers, and so forth, happy day to all of us. Today we have, as usual, a very interesting lecture by Tiago. He's going to talk about spiritual treatment and medicine, traditional medicine, and how they compare, how they complement, or how they can be used separately. So we're all looking forward to that. I hope everyone, both online and here, are having a good day. And we'll start, as we usually do, with a short reading and initial prayer by Maria.
Good morning. I'm going to read a passage from Happy Life from Divaldo Pereira Franco by Joana de Angelis. Be open to new ideas. Discuss them. Compare them with what you know and think. Get the most benefit possible out of information that is new to you. Healthy ideas renew the emotions and supply the feelings with stimuli and enthusiasm. Nobody is so wise that they do not need to learn more, or so complete that they can dispense with other contributions to their inner growth. Learn more and be receptive to new contributions. So let's close our eyes and let's thank for the opportunity of being here to learn more, to open our minds to new concepts. And let's ask for the TSS mentors to illuminate Chago with his lecture and open our minds and hearts to new ideas this afternoon, this morning. So be it.
So be it.
Hello, everyone. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here today. And thank you, Maria, for the prayer. So today, I'm just going to get this sound here. Still listening to something. Okay. So today, we're going to talk about spiritual treatment and medicine with a very provocative question. Can one replace the other? A little bit of backstage. We have a schedule of our lectures, and curiously, I asked to switch this lecture because of a conflict schedule, and actually fitted very well because, as some of you know here, I work as a doctor, as a profession, so I love to talk about this theme, and I'm actually a medical oncologist, so this fits very well. And it's interesting how whoever is giving the lecture is kind of being prepared ahead of time. Because Saturday last week, I went out with a couple of friends, and one of my friends asked me that she shared a situation in her family in which a very young person was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer that's now metastatic. And very young, not 4 years old yet, apparently. And she knows that I'm Spiritist, and she asks, how do you see that from a Spiritist point of view? So that fits very well with what we're going to talk here today. Okay. So I want to tease you guys a little bit, whoever is not a healthcare worker, because I want to know what's your definition of health? And if a healthcare worker, probably know where I'm going to, so that's why I'm excluding you. But I want you to speak up at this time. What is your definition of health? What is being healthy?
The proper function of your body for your age and gender and family history.
Okay. It's a very good definition. Anybody else?
Oh, you have so many different
Yeah.
health. You have mental health,
Mm-hmm.
you have physical health, as Joe was pointing.
Yeah.
You have spiritual health.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe a good way of like putting it all together is basically having good quality of life.
Very good. Those are very good insights. So we used to think that maybe health is just the absence of disease, but by the insights that you gave me, your concept is broader than that. Like being healthy is not only being sick. And since 1948, the World Health Organization has a very broad definition of health. They they say it's a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So this since 48, and like the WHO recognized that there are several determinants of health. And when we come across this concept in med school, we realize that health is way way outside of the scope of medicine alone. So there are several determinants of health, including spiritual health, which we're going to talk about. So what's the origin of diseases? When you think about it, and if you look into the gospel according to Spiritism, chapter 5, which is the chapter titled "Blessed Are the Afflicted," they talk about the origin of our misfortunes, and that includes also our physical misfortunes, the diseases that we may face throughout our lives. So they say that on searching for the source of earthly misfortunes, it will be realized that that many are the natural consequence of the character and behavior of those who bear them. And they add how many ills and infirmities are the consequence of intemperance and excesses of all kinds. And this is very logical. You can really place that on some behaviors that we may have that put us at risk for diseases. So there are known risk factors for several conditions that we know of. Just to name a few, cigarettes, we know they are related to several types of cancer, including larynx cancer, lung cancer, bladder cancer, and so on. Excessive alcohol, very related, we know nowadays, to colon cancer, liver cancer, cardiovascular disease. And we're actually coming to an understanding that as tobacco, there are no safe amount of alcohol that you can consume. An epidemic that we face nowadays is obesity. So obesity, we know, is related to a number of diseases, cardiovascular diseases, several cancers as well. And I put here just because I work with skin cancer, exposure to sun without protection may also predispose you to skin cancers. And that's my bias here. So sun worshippers in Ontario, please wear your sunscreen in this very beautiful summertime. So here we know it's a natural consequence. If you expose yourself for enough period of time, and depending on the predisposition of your organism, you may develop diseases. And you can naturally think that if you haven't exposed yourself to those situations, you would be less likely to develop certain types of illnesses. We should recognize here, however, that we talked, especially here, tobacco and alcohol. We're talking about addictions, and the spirit may bring their own predisposition to addictions, and we are recognizing this as a disease in itself, the several types of addictions. And as we saw here several months ago, a lecture about addictions, like we can be addicted to anything. So, for example, obesity can be an addiction to eating excessively, like binge eating, which is not healthy. And even excessive sun exposure. Why do we like to expose ourselves to the sun so much? It's essentially because sun exposure releases endorphins and makes us feel like great. But if we do that excessively, it can hurt ourselves. So this just to drag attention that, yes, that person has the choice and is exposed to those risk situations, but they may also bring within themselves predisposition to be addicted to those things and be attracted to those specific addictions. And you see that's different for every person. Like for some people, tobacco doesn't cause any interest at all. But for other people, it's like a total trigger that they should avoid. So how do the diseases affect our spirit? Um, when we look again at the Gospel according to Spiritism, the very last topic on chapter 17, they bring a very interesting message about taking care of your body and taking care of your spirit. And one of the excerpts, they say that according to the alternatives of health and infirmity, the body influences in a very important way the soul, which must be regarded as a prisoner of the flesh. So here we can conclude that there is a constant interaction between your physical body and your spirit, which is eternal. How does this connection happen in a more physical way? So in the Spirit's book, in 3 questions, and I brought here the question 93, the Spirits talk about this organ called the perispirit. And they say essentially that the spirit is surrounded by a substance that might look vaporous to you, but which is quite dense to us. And Kardec explains that it's a semi-material envelope. And I would say for us, it's still very difficult to understand what the perispirit is, because we do not understand yet all the states of matter. The spirits, on the Spirit's book, they explain that the perispirit is formed by the universal fluid that surrounds us, and that is still a state of matter, but it's a state of matter that is still invisible to us and that we cannot comprehend. So it would take a lot of physics to try to understand that, and that is way beyond my scope of practice. But in very simple way, we can say that here on this earth, we have essentially 3 components. We have our organic body, we have our soul or spirit, and connecting them, we have the perispirit. The perispirit connects the soul or spirit to our body. And this connection, as it described, occurs cell by cell. Each cell is connected to your perispirit that's connected to your body. And the perispirit is, if you think about it, it's a living organ in itself because it receives all the influences of the external environment and also can express the influences of the spirit itself. So there's always this crossway interaction between them. Therefore, you can conclude 2 things, that whatever you do to your body may reflect on your perispirit and therefore on your soul. The other way around is also true. So whatever you bring within your soul will reflect on your perispirit, and that may reflect on your organic body. So that being said, there's a crossway talk between what is the origin of diseases. You can cause a disease here in the organic body that will reflect on the perispirit, but you can bring something from prior lives that will reflect in your current physical body. So it's very interesting, and I look forward for the day when we can actually understand the perispirit in depth, because I think that will give us answers to lots of things that we don't have today. Why some people have diseases and others not. I mean, we have some clues, but in more than organic level. Anyway. So what we can say is that there are diseases that people bring within themselves. They bring their own predisposition. And again, going back to chapter 5 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, the Spirits say there are other misfortunes which, at least in appearance, are completely foreign to humans and which seem to touch them fatalistically. And then the Kardec adds several misfortunes that can happen in our lives. And also he mentions like natural disasters and congenital infirmities. So as a physician, we think of some conditions that are independent of what the patient has done throughout their lives. So we think about genetically inherited diseases. As a doctor works with cancer, we know that our cancer predisposition syndromes, in which patients essentially are born with a defect on their genes, and that predispose them to develop several types of cancer. And some of those genetic defects, we can say with 100% certainty that that person will develop some types of cancer. And sometimes those patients have to undergo a more intensive screening to detect those cancers early, or even preventative procedures to avoid cancer. Just an example, we have BRCA1, BRCA2 for breast cancer. And I always say this is Angelina Jolie's case, in which she had to remove her breasts and ovaries to prevent the development of cancer. She brought this within her organism. Like, she hasn't done anything on this current life to have this genetic predisposition, as we see in many patients. So where's the justice in this? And this goes back probably to the question of my friend last weekend. We have children that are born with malformations. And again, there's nothing on this life that can justify why that person was born with a malformation, sometimes so limiting that that person will be dependent on other people to live by. We feel that it's very unjust. And there are patients who we can encounter that we cannot identify any risk factors for their conditions. So, for example, again, going back to my scope of practice, there are cancers that we cannot explain why they happen. There's no family history to indicate that there's a predisposition syndrome. That person has not exposed themselves to any particular risk factors that we can identify when we are interviewing the patient. And it's kind of frustrating to say, I don't know why this happened. We just know it happened, right? And we just have to deal with it. And one can wonder, where is the justice in this, right? So that goes back to our planning before we incarnate. So in the Spirit's book, when they talk about the return to their corporeal lives after we have spent some time as an errant spirit in the spiritual world, Kardec asks the spirits, does a spirit have the right to choose the body it will enter? Or does it only choose the kind of life that will serve as its trial? And the spirits reply that it may also choose its body because the body's imperfections will be trials that will help its advancement if it overcomes the obstacles it encounters thereby. So we know that this is not our only life. We had previous lives. And during those previous lives, we have made a number of mistakes. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this tiny blue planet. And we always have to face the consequences of our mistakes, one way or the other. So when a spirit is enlightened enough and the spirit recognizes that they need to improve in a particular aspect of their lives, they will participate on the planning of their incarnation of their life. And often that spirit may choose as a trial to come, for example, with a cancer predisposition syndrome that will predispose them to cancer. They may choose to come with a malformation. They can choose to have a very serious disease from a very early age. And this is a choice of the spirit in a way to rescue something that they have done in a prior situation. So the spirit will choose that trial in a way to improve themselves, to evolve themselves, with the goal of evolve in the spiritual hierarchy, in the spiritual scale. So even though they'll suffer, they understand that if they overcome that suffering with resignation, they will come out better of that task. Some spirits are not enlightened enough that they can participate so actively in their planning. And when that happens, the mentors will guide the type of trials that that spirit will go through. And Kardec mentioned in the Spirit's book and also the Gospel that we see people that go throughout all sorts of sufferings during their lives, and they face that with such resignation. And I see that very often. Like I see all my patients, and sometimes I think, oh my God, I couldn't bear what that person is bearing. Sometimes it's too much. But they go through with such resignation that is usually an indication that that spirit chose that trial, and that spirit therefore can bear what that person is going through. So it's very interesting. And again, on chapter 5 of the Gospel, Kardec explains that suffering due to prior causes, which are from our prior lives, are frequently the natural consequence of wrongs that were committed previously. So we're always trying to rescue something, to pay a debt within our own conscience. When we study this and we face this, usually for the first time in Spiritism, we come across this information. I have observed this. We have a tendency to make some assumptions. Like if you say, oh, that person came with a malformation, was born without the arm or a leg, that's probably because that person did XYZ on a prior life. So my advice here is do not make assumptions. We're gonna find in the Spiritist literature several examples of spirits who have gone through a particular situation trying to rescue something that they've done in the past, but those are specific examples. Do not make any assumptions, and do not tell the person that, oh, you're going through that because you probably did whatever in a prior life, because you don't know. And that person was given the blessing of forgetting the past. So if that person was given the blessing of forgetting the past, who are you to know exactly what happened? Right? We don't have the right to judge. Right? Our role when we face those type of situations is to practice charity and try to help as much as possible. So even though it's very nice, I stimulate you, go into the Spiritist literature. It's very informative. I probably should go into it more in depth, and we get a lot of insight. But remember charity. Do not make any assumptions when you are in face with a person that is going through that particular infirmity. So treatments, the body and the spirit. We know that we have our traditional medicine. We go to our doctors seeking for treatment to help fix something that's going on, to try to alleviate a symptom. But we also have, as some of you here that have been in TSS for some time, we have spiritual treatments, and here represented in the form of the passes that we do every time at the end of the Sunday lectures. And going back to the beginning of the lecture, can one replace the other? And moving forward, I found this very interesting book by Emmanuel, who was the mentor of Chico Xavier, Chico Xavier, and it's called O Consolador, but we have a translation to English, The Counselor, which is available on Amazon. And it's some way similar to the Spirit's book, just because it also has a question-answer format. So it's very dynamic. But the Spirit who is replying is Emmanuel, right, to all the questions. And it talks about several topics, and they talk about medicine, sciences, and so on. And one of the question is, how does the spiritual realm view human medicine? And that struck me very deeply, because they say, Emmanuel replies, the practice of human medicine, when understood and applied for its higher purpose, constitutes a noble spiritual mission. Honest, sincere doctors devoted to the truth and the good are apostles of divine providence, from which they receive the necessary assistance and inspiration regardless of religious principles they embrace in life. And I went back to when I was a clueless 14-year-old. And I went to my dad and said, oh, I want to do medicine. My dad looked at me and said, are you sure? And I said, yeah, I'm sure. And then I went back to said, are you sure? And I said, yes, I'm sure. I mean, it's difficult, but it's also very, it's worth it. I wouldn't do anything else. And this drags my attention of what is one of my missions here, and that should be brought to everyone who's working in healthcare. Like, you have a mission of being this apostle of divine providence, of providing relief to whoever you face in life. And then going further in this very interesting book, they ask, in light of the efforts of medicine, how should we consider health? And then the spirits expand the concept of health that we saw in the beginning, because they say, from a spiritual point of view, to enjoy good health is to have a perfectly harmonious soul, for the attainment of which is necessary at times that we rely on the invaluable contribution of temporary illnesses and deficiencies. So the physical infirmities that we face throughout our lives, they sometimes are the medicine in itself, because they're healing us from something that we brought within our perispirit in the past, right? So when we incarnate, sometimes we bring that we bring some infirmity that we need to heal, and that will be a process of healing for the spirit. And remember, I laid out here temporary. This is temporary. Even though when we are here in our earthly lives, it may look like a long time, but 100 years to the spiritual life is just a blink of an eye. It's nothing. And remember, everything here is temporary, and whatever you're going through, you have the strength and the resources to go through it. And sometimes you just have to look for it and ask for help, because help will always be granted to you. We're never alone. And then the one very interesting question, do all physical illnesses have a spiritual cause? And Emmanuel replies, the wounds of the soul manifest through the human envelope. And it is in the soul that the primary source of all definitive medicinal resources resides. The effective remedy lies in the action of the sick spirit in itself. And then, well, look at the replies. You start to wonder, okay, so if I get an infection like COVID, does that have a spiritual cause? Like, isn't it essentially there is a virus? I was exposed to the virus, and then I became sick. And then I thought, when I got COVID for the first time, and I think that was a lesson to me for my pride, because I was already vaccinated with 2 shots. Then I went out with a restaurant with some friends, no masks on, thinking everything would be fine. And then a few days later, a friend texted me and say, oh, I have a sore throat. And then I said, oh, okay, I have some runny nose. And then I tested myself, then COVID. And then I wasn't feeling that ill, but I got mad. I got mad. And I realized that it was just my pride being hurt. Because I thought, oh, I'm doing everything so perfectly. I'm so immune. I got all my vaccines, and this is never gonna get to me. And then it's like the spirit showing that you still have to take care of yourself. This was something for your pride. So everything has a little bit of a reason behind it. I would not stimulate you to think too much every time you get a common cold, but because that may make you feel a little bit overwhelmed. But knowing that your perispirit in interaction with your body and your spirit may cause some predisposition to some diseases. We have people that have been out and about with COVID running and they've never been sick. So we don't know exactly why that happens. We try to investigate genetics and so on, but probably that person has some extra protection that they bring from their spiritual envelope. Going back to this answer, Emmanuel says that the soul is the primary source of all definitive medicinal resources. And the effective remedy lies in the action of the sick spirit. So it's the improvement of the spirit that will eventually lead to their cure. But if the soul is the primary source of all definitive medical resources, should they look for another job? Right? We're gonna answer that question very in the next slide. But going to the spiritual source of our illnesses, I want to give the example that is in the book Nosso Lar, adapted to the move screen as Astro City. This was not very well adapted in the movie, but it's just the example of Dr. Ernesto. This is the last 2 chapters of Nosso Lar. So we have Andrea Luis, who is narrating everything that he's seen in the spiritual world for us. And Andrea Luis, during the book, he goes through a journey of self-healing, self-discovery, and so on to eventually be able to work and helping other spirits. So in the very last chapters, he has the opportunity to go back to his earthly home, where his wife was and where his children lived. And he finds out that his wife has remarried, that most of his children are not remembering him as much. So he goes through the process of understanding and seeing those spirits within their own paths and seeing them as brothers and sisters. But especially with the fact that his wife has remarried, like he has to work through it for about a day until he realizes that, okay, I have to see them as my brothers and sisters. And then he finds Ernesto, who is the second husband of his wife, who is very sick at the time with a respiratory condition that we don't know exactly what it is. We think it's pneumonia. And then when Andrea sees Ernesto on bed, he sees 3 dark figures that are spirits that are obsessing Ernesto. And when we say obsessing, it's a process in which a spirit exerts persistent malevolent influence towards the other. And usually that spirit has some connection with us from a previous existence, usually a death, or is something that we predispose ourselves to by our actions. So Ernesto is being tormented by those spirits. What Andrea Luis does, he starts to pray and he calls for the assistance of Sister, oh my God, I forgot her name, Sister Elisa. So she is she's a worker of Nosso Lar, more experienced than Andrea at that time. So she comes and she applies passes in Ernesto, and those dark spirits, they then go away almost immediately. And very interesting, in the book it describes that this Elisa, she summons other spirits who Andrea hasn't seen before, but she asks them to search for particular plants like eucalyptus and mango trees. She asks if there's some of those plants in the vicinity. And what we understand is that the spirits bring fluids from those plants, and those fluids are used to produce a spiritual medicine for Ernesto. And then on the next day, Ernesto is much better than he was on the previous day. And obviously when we read this, like, we don't understand exactly what it is. Like how does eucalyptus and mango trees produce some sorts of fluids? And then we go back to, there are things we still don't know. There are states of matter that still don't know. And then it's clarified that nothing in nature is there randomly. Everything has a reason to be. So there is this aid of the spiritual medicine to help the patient. The patient is much better than the earthly doctor says it's a miracle happened, and certainly does. Those are improvements of the patients that we cannot explain why they happened. But then, should they look for another job? So there's this question in the counselor where they say, if illness are of a spiritual origin, should we resort to surgeries and other human healing methods? Like, should we dismiss them completely? And Emmanuel clarifies that humankind must utilize all the resources at its disposal in search of organic balance. For a long time to come, human beings will have to care for the health of the physical body, requiring the assistance of physicians, surgeons, pharmacists, and other missionaries of the common good until they learn to cultivate the precious health of the soul. So, going back to the question that opened the lecture, can one replace the other? So according to Emmanuel, no, at least not yet. We still need the resources of physical medicine, but we should try as much as possible to ally the resources of spiritual medicine so they complement each other. When we look through chapter 5 of the Gospel according to Spiritism about the afflictions, there's a part where they ask, so if I'm going through a determined infirmity or an affliction, should I just accept it and just live with it? Say no. Trials and expiations are a way to stimulate us to find a solution. We as human beings, we always try to be as healthy and comfortable as possible. So if you are experiencing any sort of disease, search for the aid of human medicine. There are resources that may help you. And even though for some diseases we cannot yet find a cure, like a physical cure, there is relief that can be found. And we see people living longer and better. And it's even with cancer, which is a disease that I deal with as a profession. But again, we should, with this knowledge that we have, and going back to the opening message that Marilia read, that goes directly into this, it's like we should also open our minds and be open to new knowledge, to add to us and to help us to improve our health, both spiritually and physically. So it's very interesting. So I can keep my job for the time being until we are purified enough. So treatments in a Spiritist center. So I highlighted here a post, I think it was from this week at our Instagram page at TSS, talking about fraternal meetings. So let's say the TSS hosts individual fraternal meetings, and then the post explains what are fraternal meetings. So they are individual conversations with a volunteer from TSS and who can attend anyone. But I will highlight this later part here, this disclaimer. Fraternal meetings are not intended to replace medical, psychological, or psychiatric treatment. We encourage individuals to seek qualified professional care when needed. So very important, any Spiritist center anywhere that is really committed and that is serious will never tell you to abandon your medical treatment. They will never, never, never tell you to do that because we understand that the two, for the time being, will complement each other, and they will complement each other for a long time. So yes, I think it's very important to seek care in a Spiritist center with the spiritual help, but knowing that the human material resources are there to help you, and they're there for a reason. Nothing happens without the permission of God. And I would say that we have had so many improvements in human medicine, and I'm very sure that this is all with the permission of God. I was very happy the other day reading that in Brazil, the transmission of HIV from mother to child has been eliminated, which is excellent news in the fight against HIV. And this happens because God allows science to progress with new medications that can help people with HIV live longer. So everything is within plan. So what other treatments may be offered in a Spiritist center? So we talked about the fraternal meetings. There are the passes, and that are represented here. What is a pass? A pass is essentially a transfusion of energy. Think of it as a blood transfusion. It's kind of similar to it. We have someone who is a volunteer who is helping to canalize the energy from the spiritual world to the person who is receiving that energy. A little bit of a secret. The spirits who help us with this, they're very elevated spirits, very much elevated than us here on earth. And they actually do not need us to do this. So I feel whenever we are giving a pass to someone, we are the ones that are actually being helped. And another secret for you is that when you are here, you may be already receiving a pass. You're already receiving this transfusion of energy without you even noticing it. But again, I think passes are still important for us. I think it connects us more easily to the spiritual world and connects us as brothers and sisters. We have fluidified water that we always have there on the back. The fluidified water, as we always explain briefly, is a water fluidified by the spirits, by the good spirits. So the spirits manipulate the fluids of the universal fluid, and they manipulate to embed it in the water, and that will help us with the regeneration of our perispirit and potentially our body.
It's the eucalyptus and the mango that they put.
Could be. There you go. Do you have mangoes around? And the Spirit Center also helps with assistance to spirits. So here represented is a drawing of Chico in a spiritual meeting, essentially a mediumship meeting, right? So those are meetings that happen in the house. Nowadays, most of the Spiritist centers in Brazil, following the directions of the Brazilian Spiritist Federation, they do that in a private way, so they don't do that open to the public. And this is because of the mediums want to conduct that very seriously in a private way, so it doesn't become a spectacle. That's what we don't want it to become, right? And knowing that if you are going through a spiritual problem and you're going through a spiritual assistance, you do not need to be in the house at the moment of the mediumship meeting. Be sure that the spirits are helping you and helping that spirit who may be connected to you and may be a cause of torment. You are being helped at the same time, right? So you don't need to be physically here to do this. Okay. And as the last slide, how can we improve our spiritual health? So our physical health, we already know because we get information all the time. We know what you need to do. You need to eat healthy. You need to exercise. You need to have a proper sleep. You have not to smoke, not to drink excessively. We know, but there's still one part or the other that we fail. I think I'm failing on my sleep. My sleep is not the best at the moment, but there's always things we have to improve. But spiritual health, how can we improve that? One way is prayer. Prayer connects us with the higher realms. We can connect with our spiritual guide and ask for help from the good spirits, right? So that's the way we can improve. Not only prayer, but cultivate good thoughts. This is difficult, to be cultivating good thoughts all the time, especially in the world that we are in. But then we at least have to make an effort. if I think something that's not good, like thinking bad things towards one person, try to deviate from that as much as you can. Go do a reading, do a prayer, deviate from that. Try to cultivate good things. This will be good for your spiritual health as well. Practice the good. That's probably the best one. As much as you can, as much as possible as it is, try to practice the good. Try to do something good for somebody else. It can be just listening to them, giving them a good word, giving them a good advice, whatever is available to you. Like the Spirit say that if you really want to help someone, opportunities will show up. And remember, love your neighbor as yourself, which is the ultimate commandment. If you forget everything, remember this. That's what Jesus tells us. And this year, remembering that Jesus, the doctor of the doctors, the master doctor, he could heal people just by manipulating the fluids, as magnanimous as he is, and imposing his hands. And here's a representation of him curing someone from leprosy, which for us takes 9 months. He could take in seconds. So we still have a lot to learn. And I'll finish here, and I'm open for questions and comments.
Thank you, Thiago. Any questions? No comments, questions? Yes.
Yeah, I was very happy to come here and see the subject with the speaker today. It was really nice. Thanks for all the medical input. I just want to add that when you comment that the cure is in our soul, I think we should think that, when you said also nothing is random, right? So whatever comes to us has a reason for it, and maybe one of the ways to cure that disease, so we don't come back with it again. Let's say in another life. It's know ourselves. We can get. It's possible to know why sometimes if you're really open to know yourself. And simple thing is, if you read books about the chakras, you see that each chakra has a set of organs and feelings to it, like it's the love, it's your base, it's your connection with the other. So whenever we have a physical problem, we can think about which areas is affecting, and that's why we start to get to know ourselves a little better. Maybe we can see the areas in ourselves that need improvement.
Yeah.
So regardless, even finding where it is, whenever we have something so chronic, for instance, I think looking to ourselves and trying to see which areas of myself I can improve. Because if there are areas to improve, for sure diseases will come along one day. So I think knowing ourselves is a way to evolve, and one day we'll not need doctors. But thank you to the doctors. Thank you. It was really nice.
So if I may, I'd just like to add to that, is that when we talk about spiritual treatment, we have to understand, what does a cure mean, right? Because from a physical perspective, we want the cure to be, I want to be healthy again. I want to, maybe that's not the purpose of the spiritual healing, because we know that some diseases are almost like mandatory for us. We have to go through this. So what can the spiritual treatment do? Help us understand and accept that disease in a different way. Goes back to the positive, good thoughts, right? And maybe that's the cure that we're getting at that point. So we're all going to die one day. So it's really what happens to us, and how do we approach the life that we have with the conditions that we're given, and make the most out of it.
I just want to add that there is the physical health, there is the spiritual health, and there's the mental health. So I think we're missing the mental, because if you're not mentally healthy, you can affect your physical, and you can affect your spiritual too. So mental health is very, very
definitely. Mental health is very important, and I have a personal example of how mental health can impact your physical and spiritual health at the same time. So at some point I was taking an antidepressant. My psychiatrist said, in the beginning, you may have nightmares with this. And then when you study Spiritist and you go study about the sleep and dreams, you understand that when you sleep, your spirit is not disconnect, but it goes walk around whatever we want to go according to our tendencies, and dreams may be a reflection of that, or even some thought that you have persistently. So sometimes dreams are derived from that. And certainly enough, when I started that, I had some nightmares. So something in the chemistry of my brain that was affected by the medication probably affected my perispirit, and then that made my spirit seem better, or memorize whatever nightmare I was having a little bit better. So it was very interesting to think, oh, this is a chemical thing, but it's affecting how my sleep, how my spirit is facing the sleep, right? And probably some part of healing process as well in the beginning. Eventually the nightmares stopped, but it's so interesting how your mental health can have a deep impact on your physical and the spiritual health. So we should pay very close attention to our mental health, especially in the times that we live nowadays. And be sure that if you're feeling that you're not doing well, something is not right, seek for help. There are people there to help you.
And talking about the fraternal meetings, we at TSS, we value very, very much all those things that you put there. Like if you're not well, we don't even, like I had people that came for fraternal meetings that I told them, if you don't have this, if you don't look for a doctor, I can't see you here anymore. You can come for the passes, but not for the fraternal meetings. Because when the person is that gone, we can't, because you're not doing any good to them. So the next time he came with his prescriptions and he showed it to me. So it's something very serious, because this is not psychotherapy. I'm a psychologist, and what we do here is not psychotherapy. We can bring things from
background,
I can bring that, but we focus on the spiritual side of the problem, the person's problems, and how can spiritually the center can help them. So it's something that we are very proud to have at TSS, and we follow all the Brazilian federal Spiritist, I don't even know, FEB.
Brazilian Federation of Spiritism.
And the other point that I want to make is when we're talking about the passes that you said, oh, they don't need us. They don't need us, but sometimes they do, because what we give when you're giving a pass, some people, they have some problems in their perispirit that the body, the animalistic energy needs to go through us to get to them. So the spirit who is helping us, he doesn't have that anymore, right? But so that's why they need us to do that too.
I was thinking of that as well. It also, when the pass giver is in front of you giving the pass, you automatically open yourself up to receive the energy more plainly, more fully, right? Because it's like a little quiet moment that you have one-on-one. And that physical connection, as Sandra was saying, is still very important to us. That's why we need people around us. That's why we need to have interactions, social interactions for our mental health. And this is all comes together. It's holistic.
Definitely it is.
It was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add something that struck me in your talk, a great talk, phenomenal. Thank you very much for sharing this with us. But when you said that anything in the world is random, and everything's connected. So like that does just brought to my mind this thing about in medicine, if not all, most of the drugs that we have nowadays come from nature, right? So like that just highlights that point of like how much we have to take care of our world and our environment in order for science to progress and to find these answers that have always been there. It's just a matter of time and scientific advancement. So and when you mention COVID and all these like pandemics and these things that are coming around, it's basically just a reflect of like how poorly we've been treating our world and our environment, because basically when things are not in equilibrium, it's when these things come around and affect everyone's health, not only physical health but mental health as well, with all the losses that we have during COVID, with all the impacts that we had in our daily lives. So like when you said that, nothing is random, like and we are here for a reason and we have the resources, we just need to take better care of them and have patience for scientific progress so we can find these answers.
I think like what you said is I totally agree with you, and makes me think about all the determinants of health. It's not within the individual, but within our society and within our world. Our world right now is not healthy. Like we're facing several diseases, like the disease of greed, of violence, selfishness, and this definitely can affect us, right? Yeah.
And this comes from the fact that like we as humans, we forget that we are animals, right? Like we are still, like we are part of this world. It's not because we only have like this ability of thinking and this brain that like might be a little bit more complex and make more complex connections than in other animals, that like we have the right of thinking that we're superior to them and that we can distance themselves from them. No, we're like all an interconnected ecosystem, and we need this equilibrium to function properly.
We are companions, right? If we don't take care of our house, this planet will regulate itself, and we'll find all the ways necessary to regulate. So,
And Thiago, you come from the biggest pharmacy in the whole world. You come from Amazon, and I think Amazon, they have so much going on there in the case of natural medicine.
I mean, our indigenous populations, they knew quite a lot of things, and the universities have researched a few things and found some interesting results. So it's
amazing.
It's very interesting. We need to like take care of our environment, is taking care of our health as well, our world health, essentially. So, thank you.
Well, that was a very interactive theme. I think it touches all of us. Thank you again, Thiago.
Thank you.
I'll thank everyone who's online. For those that are now disconnecting, have a happy Father's Day if you're in Canada or countries that celebrate. For those who will remain here, we will proceed with our passing. Thank you.